Hello all, welcome to Geography with Sukumar. So in this video I will explain the concept of earthquakes. So what is the meaning of earthquake? Earthquake is the shaking or trembling of the earth surface, that is due to the sudden release of energy from inside the earth, which later travel in the form of seismic waves. Okay, and these earthquakes occurs mostly on the earth crust, that is what we are calling as the shallow focus or the upper mantle region of the earth. So this is the crust region, and then we will classify it as the mantle. Okay, and the uppermost region is called as the upper mantle of the mantle. And so from where these seismic waves are getting originated, they are triggered by the sudden release of energy, that is what we are usually calling as the earthquakes, and that energy is getting radiated from a point what we are calling it as the focus, that is inside the earth, and epicenter is the point that is directly above the focus on the surface of the earth. So we can classify these seismic waves into body waves and surface waves, which themselves will be classified again into primary waves and S waves on the body waves, and surface waves can again be divided into love waves and Rayleigh waves. Okay, first we will understand what are the body waves. Body waves travel through the earth's interior, and surface waves travel along the earth's surface. See, the body waves are traveling in the earth's interior region, and the surface waves are traveling on the earth's surface. Waves again divided into primary waves and secondary waves. So what are the primary waves? Are the fastest seismic waves, arrives first at the seismic stations, and they are called as the longitudinal waves, because when P waves are traveling, suppose the P waves are traveling in this direction, and when they are traveling in this direction, they will move the particles inside the medium or the inside the P waves in the direction along the direction of waves, back and forth. So the particles are moving along the direction of the waves and the back and forth direction. That's why we are calling it as the longitudinal wave, P waves. Okay, and P waves have the capability to travel through solids, liquids and gases as well, with a speed of approximately 5 to 8 kilometers per second in the earth crust region. What is the earth crust region? Earth crust is the uppermost layer. So we can divide the earth into three layers, right? Crust, mantle and the core region, right? So the P waves can travel through the earth surface with a speed of, that is the earth crust, with a speed of 5 to 8 kilometers per second, and it will cause the particles to move in the back and forth region, and that's why we are calling it as the longitudinal waves, right? So, and these P waves can travel through the earth's inner core also, because it has the capability to travel through both liquids and gases as well, unlike the S waves which can only travel through solids. Okay, so important in the earthquakes because it can help in the early warning system and to alert the people, because they can reach the earth surface immediately before the surface wave arrival. That's why P waves are very important in warning of the people before the earthquakes will arrive. Okay, and this proves a very critical data for the earthquakes epicenter location as well. Okay, so next we will understand the concept of secondary waves. So what are secondary waves? Now we will understand the concept of secondary waves, which are actually slower than the P waves and arrives to the earth surface after the arrival of P waves. That's why they are called as the secondary waves. The secondary waves are called as the transverse waves, because the particles in the S waves, when they are moving, will move perpendicular to the direction of waves. So suppose the wave is traveling in this direction, the particles actually travel up and down, that is perpendicular to the direction of wave, right? The vibration of the particles will happen in a perpendicular manner to the direction of the S wave. That's why we are calling it as the transverse waves. and they can travel only through the solids and not liquids. That's why S waves, that's why we can't find the S waves in the core region of the earth, and it will travel with a speed of 3 to 4.5 kilometers per second, causing the stronger shaking than the P waves, and they cannot pass through the core and creates the S wave shadow zone in the core region of the earth, helping scientists determine that the size of the nature of the earth's core. And stronger, these S waves have the stronger destructive potential in the epicenter regions compared to the P waves. So what is epicenter? We have seen in this diagram, right? Epicenter is the place immediately above the focal point on the earth surface. Okay, so when these body waves reach the earth surface, when the body waves reach the earth surface, they transform into the surface waves. Okay, and they themselves, the surface waves is divided into love waves and the Rayleigh waves. What these love waves do? It will have the horizontal shearing motion and confined to the surface layers, extremely destructive to the buildings. So when the body waves reach the earth surface, they divided into love waves and the Rayleigh waves. What these love waves do? They will move the earth in a horizontal direction. Like see here, horizontal direction, right? So that's why what will happen? They were dangerous to the buildings and it can cause destruction to the buildings. Okay, and what happens in case of Rayleigh waves? They will actually see this image. They will cause the earth to move in elliptical motion. Okay, cause both vertical and the horizontal ground displacement, causing more destruction than the love waves. It is the slowest and most damaging waves as well, responsible for the most destruction in the earthquakes, and can travel over long distances with minimal loss of energy, making them dangerous across the wide areas, right? So till now we have discussed about the earthquakes, and now we will discuss the reasons for the earthquakes. What are the causes for the earthquakes? So the number one is the fault zones. Fault zones means when two rocks are in contact with each other, they will be under certain, they will be contact, right? This contact layer is called as the fault zone. Fault zone. So when the frictional energy or the frictional power between these two rocks, right, are okay, the rocks will be stay together. But when the sliding power is greater between the rocks than the frictional force, when they overcome this frictional force, right, then the rocks will slide from each other and will cause the release of energy. That is the place we call as the fault zone, right? Rocks will slip suddenly as well. So in case of what will happen in case of plate tectonics, there are different plates, right? According to plate tectonics theory as well, earth is divided into different plates, major plates and minor plates, right? So when two plates are in a divergent manner, that is one plate is in this direction and the other one is in this direction, so they are traveling in an opposite direction, so the magma will comes out and volcanism will happen and the release of energy also will happen, which in turn will leads to the earthquakes as well. And then convergent plates. So when the two plates are converging or coming towards each other, right, then the plates will get crushed and the release of energy will happen, and which in turn will cause the earthquakes. Okay, earthquakes. So the plate tectonics is also one of the reason for the earthquakes. And volcanic activity, magma comes out, right? Magma will come out of the volcanoes and cause the mild earthquakes as well. And human induced earthquakes, how can they happen? Because of the minings and the reservoirs induced seismicity and the nuclear tests as well will cause the earthquakes. Okay, so we can understand the global distribution of the earthquakes. So where the earthquakes are happening majorly, that is in the circum-Pacific belt, where 68% of the earthquakes will happen in the Pacific Ocean only, Pacific Ocean region only. This is the Pacific Ring of Fire, because there are major movement of the plates will happen here, and because of that movement more amount of energy will be released and more earthquakes will happen here. Okay, there will be constant movement of the Pacific plate, Eurasian plate here, and the North American plate as well. So there was always constant functions between these plates, collisions between these plates, subductions also happens here. That's why the major earthquakes are happening here, and that's why we are calling it as the Ring of Fire, because most of the earthquakes and most active volcanoes also are present here. That's why. Okay, and Alpine belt will have almost 15% of the global energy, and mid-oceanic ridge belt, mid-oceanic ridge belt. See here, this is the mid-oceanic ridge, where shallow and less destructive earthquakes will happen. So when we see the earthquake zones in India, there are about only 59% of the land is prone to moderate or severe earthquakes, and they are majorly present in the northern states. And zone 5 is the highest risky area, that is in the northeastern region, Jammu Kashmir region, Uttarakhand and Himachal. And zone 4 will consist of Delhi and parts of northern India, zone 3 will consist of central India, and zone 2 will consist of the south India. That is the earthquake zones of the India. Okay, thank you.